You don't have to keep trying to prove your value to people who only see you as an ATM or a doormat. I intentionally crushed the SATs just to get as far away from the it girl Sarah Miller as possible. Right after the exam, her clique cornered me to talk trash. Sarah claimed she totally bombed her test. "You'd better turn a blank sheet this afternoon," they sneered, "or you can kiss your chances of sucking up to her goodbye." The whole group exploded into laughter. I caught the look of pure disgust on Sarah's face, simply nodded, and told them, understood. On the inside, I was already over it. If anyone else wanted to be her personal doormat, they were more than welcome to the job. I was officially finished. The second I was out of sight, I called my family's estate manager and told him to cut off every cent of financial support to her family and have them evicted immediately. Sarah started blowing up my phone with nearly 100 missed calls, but I ignored every single one. Now she's acting desperate, but I have to wonder where all this urgency was when I was the one trying. In my previous life, as the heir to the most powerful family in America, I was completely infatuated with my driver's daughter. I was so blinded by her that I even signed over the entire conglomerate my father left me just to get her to marry me. She spent my fortune like water while seeing another guy behind my back the entire time. She pampered her boyfriend like he was a prince, while I was nothing more than her glorified errand boy. On the day they got married, I reached out to her in a moment of desperation, hoping to borrow enough for a basic medical bill. Her response was absolutely heartless. "All these years of you obsessing over me have been a total nightmare. Morrison, do the world a favor and just drop dead." As the life started to fade from me, a woman held me close, and I finally saw the truth. Chloe Sterling, the New York socialite I'd spent years pushing away, had been the only one by my side the whole time. When I finally opened my eyes again, I was back in my senior year at Greenwich Prep. I was taking a nap at my desk when the manipulative Sarah Miller shook me awake. "Tyler has a stomachache," she snapped. "Go get him some antacids right now. After that, head to the cafeteria and grab him some lunch. Tell them to double the protein. He's looking way too thin and needs the extra calories." Tyler was hunched over his desk, playing the victim while half the class hovered around him like he was a celebrity. His little stomachache was the talk of the room, but Sarah was playing the part of the devoted girlfriend to perfection. They were the top 2 students in the class, and to everyone else, they were the golden couple of the school. As for me, I was just Sarah's mindless lapdog, sleeping through lectures and spending every free second fetching her whatever she wanted. Now that I realized I'd been given a second chance, looking at her fake concern made me want to laugh. I couldn't believe I'd ever let someone like Sarah Miller walk all over me. When she saw I wasn't moving, she snapped at me. "Are you deaf?" I said, "Move it." After barking the order, she turned back to Tyler, rubbing his back with a tenderness she never once showed me. Tyler caught my eye and played the nice guy, saying to Sarah, "Maybe we should let Morrison be. I can manage." Sarah just rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. He lives for this. He'd probably feel left out if I didn't give him something to do, wouldn't you, Morrison?" She looked at me, waiting for my usual pathetic nod of approval. I just gave her a cryptic smirk and walked out toward the cafeteria without saying a word. Once there, I stood in line and ordered 2 full meals for myself. A guy standing near me in line chuckled. "On lunch duty for Queen Sarah again? Too bad for you. She only has eyes for Tyler. He's actually on her level, unlike a guy like you." I played dumb and asked him what he meant by that. He sneered right in my face. "Come on. Everyone knows you're just a driver's kid. You really think hitched a ride in her family's car every morning makes you her equal? Wake up, man. A guy as useless as you is only good for being a servant. You'll be lucky if she lets you wash her floors or change her future kids' diapers." I felt a flash of anger and shot back. "Is that what Sarah told you? That I'm the help?" The truth was she was only in that car because I had a crush on her and told my driver to pick her up as a favor. But she had played the part so well that the entire school now thought Sarah was the billionaire heiress, and I was just the chauffeur's kid. The guy just rolled his eyes at me. "Obviously. Now hurry up and get her lunch before it gets cold, servant boy." He burst out laughing, and it didn't take long for the rest of the students in the cafeteria to join in on the joke. The lunch bell rang, and I saw Sarah heading back toward the main building. Instead of following her, I found a quiet bench by the gardens and took my time eating both of those meals myself. Honestly, I couldn't even remember the last time I sat down and enjoyed a real meal. In that miserable past life, I was so broke I survived on scraps, scavenging for bruised produce at the farmer's market after they closed up for the day. Back then, meat was a luxury I could never afford. Even after polishing off both plates, I still felt like I could eat more. By the time I finally strolled back into the classroom, the final bell had already gone off. Sarah's head snapped toward me as I walked in. "Where the hell have you been? And where are the meds?" she demanded. "What medicine?" I asked, my voice flat and completely stripped of the usual affection I showed her. Sarah looked at me like I was an idiot. "The antacids for Tyler. I literally just told you his stomach was killing him. Are you deaf? Or just incompetent? You can't even get one simple thing right." I took a look at Tyler, who was trying his best to look frail. "Who am I to Tyler exactly?" I asked. "And why is it my job to play pharmacist for him?" Tyler's family didn't have a dime, and ever since he and Sarah hooked up, she'd been bankrolling his life with my money. It was a pattern. Every time my dad bought me something high-end, Sarah would find a way to give it to Tyler. Even that designer watch he was wearing right now was one of mine. The two of them were living large on my credit cards, enjoying my lifestyle while treating me like the hired help. Sarah's face twisted with annoyance. "Fine, Morrison, keep acting out. You're just doing this for attention, aren't you? But don't come crying to me when I decide to cut you off. You'll be back on your knees begging for my forgiveness by tomorrow." I looked her dead in the eyes, genuinely amused by her ego. What exactly would I be begging forgiveness for? What did I do that was so wrong? The entire room went dead silent as people realized I was actually standing up to her. Everyone was wondering if the school's favorite doormat had finally grown a backbone. Sarah looked stunned for a second, probably thinking of all the times I'd practically begged for her attention. She finally huffed and issued a threat. "If you're going to be this way, don't even think about catching a ride with me after school." I just gave her a curt nod. "Suits me just fine." I strolled over to my desk and sat down, acting completely unbothered, as if the idea of not being in a car with her was the best news I'd heard all day. Tyler's friend, Jessica Vance, decided she needed to play the hero and stood up. "Seriously, Morrison, what is wrong with you? She asked for one tiny favor to help Tyler, and you're acting like a jerk. Can't you see he's actually suffering?" I shot her a look that made her flinch. "If you're so worried about him, go to the pharmacy yourself." Jessica looked outraged. "That's literally your job. Why would I do it? My job? I'm not Tyler's family. How is it my responsibility?" Jessica actually pointed a finger at me. "You're the help at Sarah's house. Getting medicine for her boyfriend is just part of the deal, isn't it?" I slowly turned my gaze towards Sarah. "Sarah, have you been telling everyone that I'm your family's servant?" She actually flinched when our eyes met, and I saw a flash of genuine guilt cross her face. It wasn't a surprise. People saw her getting out of Maybach every morning and just assumed it was hers. She never bothered to correct them because she was too ashamed to admit her father was just a chauffeur and she was living in my family's guest house. And yet, here I was, being painted as the villain. Sarah, who unfortunately sat right next to me, stood up. "Whatever, forget the medicine. I'll deal with it later." She probably assumed I was just acting out because I was jealous of her and Tyler. She gave me another look. "What about the lunch then?" She figured if I didn't have the meds, I must at least have the food, especially after hearing I'd bought 2 plates. I just looked at her calmly and said, "I ate both of them." "Excuse me? You ate both?" Her composure was starting to crack, so I just gave her a slow nod. "Yep." The girl sitting in front of us turned around, looking at me like I was some kind of animal. "Are you serious? Were you a pig? Who eats 2 entire lunches?" They were part of the group that spent all day sucking up to Sarah and trashing me. I used to let it slide because they were her friends, but I finally realized I'd just been bankrolling their lifestyles. Every treat Sarah gave them was paid for by me. I didn't even raise my voice. I'm spending my own money. I could order 20 meals if I felt like it, and it wouldn't be any of your business. The girl's face twisted in anger. "Your money? Please. We all know you're living off Sarah's family's generosity." I didn't even bother correcting her, but I could see Sarah fuming next to me. The fact that I hadn't brought her food and she was actually going to be hungry for once was really starting to get under her skin. She leaned in and hissed, "Morrison, you're making a huge mistake. Let's see how long you can keep up this little rebellion." She stood up, grabbed her bag, and looked at Tyler's desk mate. "Jessica, let's switch. You can sit with him. I'm done." This was her go-to move whenever I disappointed her. She'd refused to sit with me, knowing that I'd previously begged for the privilege of being her desk mate. The arrangement was that she was supposed to be my tutor, but looking back, she hadn't taught me a single thing. All she did was use that time to treat me like her personal assistant. She clearly thought this silent treatment would break me, but I didn't even look up. Sarah was stuck there hungry, and Tyler was still whining about his stomach. She just sat in her new seat, glaring at me from across the room. Sarah was beyond livid this time, probably already mapping out exactly how she'd humiliate me when I finally broke down and apologized. As soon as the final bell rang, I headed straight for the Maybach waiting at the front gate. Word had already traveled that I'd finally crossed Sarah, and half the student body was lingering around to see what would happen. When they saw me walk right up and get into the car, the whispering started immediately. "Can you believe this guy? He won't even buy her lunch, but he's still mooching a ride in her car. He's just the driver's kid, yet he acts like he owns the place. Sarah isn't even out yet, and he's already inside. Sarah is way too soft on him. If I were her, I'd have kicked that arrogant brat to the curb a long time ago." I heard every word, but I didn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. I just closed the door and told the driver, "Let's move." The driver, Mr. Miller, looked at me in the rearview mirror. "But Sarah isn't here yet. We need to wait for her." She was usually late because of her various clubs, and I'd always been happy to sit there and wait for her for as long as it took. He was clearly shocked that I wanted to leave without her. Seeing him try to stand up for his daughter at my expense was almost funny. "Mr. Miller, my father only has one child. Since when did the Carter family start having a miss? Did you and Sarah have a little falling out?" he asked, trying to sound concerned. "Don't worry. I'll set her straight when we get home." I shook my head. "Don't bother. Just drive. I'm not sharing a car with her today or ever again." Mr. Miller didn't budge. He was so used to me being terrified of his daughter that he didn't take me seriously. He probably figured that even if he ignored me, the worst that would happen was Sarah giving me a hard time later. He was so sure his daughter would eventually marry into my fortune that he'd stopped acting like a servant and started acting like my future father-in-law. "Are you going to drive the car? But don't need to find someone else who will?" I demanded, my voice hardening. To be honest, my father had tried to fire him years ago because of his gambling addiction. He didn't want someone like that behind the wheel, but I was such a fool back then that I begged for him to stay, just so I could keep Sarah close to me. I'd lied to my father, telling him what a great guy he was, just to save his skin. And now, the man wouldn't even follow a direct order from the person who paid his salary. "There she is," he said, completely ignoring me as he spotted Sarah. "Mr." Miller hopped out of the driver's seat to open the door for them. Sarah was practically carrying Tyler as they approached. Mr. Miller held the door open while she started ushering him into the back seat next to me. I used to be so pathetic that I'd let Tyler hitch a ride every single day just to keep Sarah happy. My driver would go out of his way to pick him up every morning and drop him off every afternoon, all on my family's dime. Just as Tyler was about to slide in, I spoke up. "I'm sorry. Didn't you say you were done with me? Why are you trying to get into my car?" The crowd of students watching from the sidewalk started buzzing with more insults. "What is Morrison's problem? That's Sarah's car. He's acting like he's the one in charge. They're already doing him a favor by letting him ride, and now he's trying to kick them out." Sarah just stood there, looking at me with pure confusion. She couldn't wrap her head around the fact that I wasn't folding. "Morrison, seriously? I told you, I'm over the whole lunch thing. I've decided to forgive you, okay? Don't make this a bigger deal than it is." I just looked at her. "I don't need or want your forgiveness. Find another way home. I'm literally asking you to leave me alone." Sarah's face turned from pale to a deep, angry red. She knew her entire reputation as a wealthy socialite was tied to that car. If she didn't get in, everyone would know the truth. Without another word, she actually grabbed my arm and yanked me right out of the car so Tyler could take my spot. "Sarah, you really think you can just do that?" I was genuinely shocked. I'd forgotten just how entitled she was in my past life. Looking at her now, I couldn't fathom how I ever thought she was anything special. Sarah didn't even look at me. She just slammed the door and shouted, "Drive!" And to my total disbelief, Mr. Miller actually hit the gas, leaving me standing alone on the sidewalk. The students watching from the gate erupted in laughter. That's what he gets for being such a prick. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. It was actually a hand-me-down piece of junk Sarah had given me. I'd given her the brand new iPhone my father got me for my birthday, just to see her smile, and she'd traded me this outdated piece of garbage. Back then, I convinced myself it was her way of staying humble. Now it just looked pathetic. Luckily, it still worked well enough to make a call to my father. Less than 5 minutes later, that same Maybach came screeching back toward the school and pulled up right in front of me. Mr. Miller hopped out, looking absolutely terrified. He'd obviously just gotten a lecture of a lifetime from my dad. "Tell them to get out," I said coldly. "I'm not riding with them." Mr. Miller looked back at the car as Sarah and Tyler reluctantly climbed out. Tyler looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Morrison, look, if you have a grudge against me, fine. But don't take it out on Sarah. She's only ever been kind to you." Sarah cut him off. "Don't waste your breath." As soon as they were on the sidewalk, I stepped back into the car. I rolled down the window, gave her a sarcastic little wave, and said, "See ya." Mr. Miller kept glancing at me, clearly shocked by my change in attitude. He tried to play peacemaker. "Sir, friends fight. I'm sure she'll apologize. It's just, she's stuck taking the bus now. Who knows when she'll actually get home. If every other student in this town can handle the bus, so can she. And Mr. Miller, let's get one thing straight. I'm the one paying you. If you have an issue with how I do things, my father's office is open for your resignation." He really thought my crush on his daughter gave him a free pass to treat me like a subordinate. If I hadn't called my father, he really would have left me there. My words hit him like a physical blow, and he didn't say another word the whole way home. When I walked through the front door, our housekeeper, Mrs. Davis, looked surprised. "Morrison, you're home early. Where's Sarah?" I didn't even slow down. From this moment on, we don't use that name in this house. Mrs. Davis stood there in shock. She'd been waiting years for me to finally wake up. I had been so obsessed with Sarah that she and her father had actually started to believe they were the ones running the estate. Mrs. Davis had tried to warn me a dozen times, but she'd always stayed quiet to avoid upsetting me. Seeing her look at me with such relief reminded me that she was the only person on the staff who actually cared about my well-being. I'd been so blinded by Sarah that I'd actually been cold to Mrs. Davis in the past. I remembered that in my previous life, as soon as Sarah got her hands on the money, Mrs. Davis was the first one she threw out. Looking at her now, I felt a lump form in my throat. "I'm going to my room for a bit," I told her. She nodded. "Of course. By the way, Chloe Sterling is here. Should I tell her you're not seeing visitors?" Chloe had been coming around for years, but I used to be so hung up on Sarah that I treated her like an intruder just because my dad liked her. I made a point to never even give her the time of day. I realized I barely even knew what she looked like. Then it hit me. In my final moments, it was Chloe's people who tried to save me, while she still considered herself my fiancée despite my behavior. I turned back to Mrs. Davis. "Actually, I'll see her." "Where is she?" I asked. "Out back with Snowy," she replied. I've been the one who begged for that dog, but the second Sarah mentioned she wasn't a fan, I'd completely neglected the poor thing. I was shocked to see how much Snowy loved her. She was just in her standard school uniform, but she carried herself with an elegance that made it look like haute couture. Thinking about how she'd stayed single for me all those years made my heart ache. Chloe looked up and caught me watching her from the door. She started to walk over, but then she hesitated, clearly remembering that I usually treated her like she was invisible. She came to a dead stop. "Morrison," she said softly. She was stunning, but it was her composure that really set her apart. She had this maturity that made her seem way older than 18. Plus, she was literally the top-ranked student in the entire state. Sarah absolutely loathed her. She always told me that Chloe only got those grades because her family could buy her whatever tutor she wanted. Sarah was convinced she'd be even better if she had Chloe's bank account. Every time a new honor roll came out, Sarah would throw a fit, and I was stupid enough to take her side. I treated Chloe like an enemy for years without even having a single conversation with her. I realized then how insane that was. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Did you need something?" I asked. "I just wanted to check on you," she said softly. When I didn't answer right away, she looked down. "I get it. You don't want me here. I'll go." She hadn't even planned on running into me. She just wanted to spend some time with the dog. She seemed shocked I was even acknowledging her presence. As she turned to walk away, I blurted out, "Would you like to stay for dinner?" Chloe froze, her eyes widening. "Really?" she asked. The afternoon sun was setting behind me, and for the first time in a long time, I actually gave her a genuine smile. Of course, Sarah wasn't home yet, probably still coddling Tyler somewhere. Normally, I wouldn't let anyone touch the food until she arrived. Mrs. Davis looked at me in disbelief. "We're starting without Sarah? Why would we wait?" I asked. The staff was so used to me being her personal servant that they didn't know how to react. Mrs. Davis just smiled and said, "Understood. I'll have everything brought out immediately." "Oh, and one more thing," I said casually. "Let Mr. Miller know his services won't be required tomorrow, or ever again." Mrs. Davis actually stopped in her tracks, but she was smart enough not to argue. "I'll handle it," she said. After officially letting go of Sarah's dad, I joined Chloe at the table. I caught her staring at me a few times, but she'd look away the second I turned. I hadn't realized how shy she actually was, so I decided to tease her a bit. "Is there something on my face? Or am I just that difficult to look at?" I joked. I might have been failing my classes, but I knew I wasn't an eyesore. Chloe finally looked up, her face a mask of calm. "No," she replied, but I could see the tips of her ears turning a bright shade of pink. I grinned. "So, I've heard you're kind of genius." She shifted in her seat, clearly not used to me being this nice. "I do okay," she said quietly. "Do you know any good tutors?" I'm looking for a recommendation. Relying on Sarah was obviously a dead end. I wasn't going to spend this life being the rich kid who thought a trust fund was a substitute for a brain. I had a second shot at life, and I wasn't going to waste it by failing out of school. "You're looking for help?" Chloe asked, looking surprised. "What about Sarah? I thought she was your tutor." "I let her go," I said. It was common knowledge she lived at the estate as my tutor, but she'd never actually taught me a thing. She was too busy being annoyed by my existence to actually do the job I was paying her for. Chloe looked at me, making sure I wasn't joking. She took a sip of her water, looking a bit nervous. "I don't actually have a tutor. I've always just done it myself. But if you want, I could come over and help you study." She probably thought I'd shut her down like I used to. She was already reeling from the dinner invitation. When my face lit up, she looked genuinely touched. "Really?" I asked. "If you're okay with it, I'd love to help," she replied. "That would be amazing. I just don't want to mess up your own schedule." She gave me a soft look. "Trust me, Morrison, it won't be a problem at all." I knew she'd already finished the curriculum and was basically coasting until graduation, but she was too humble to bring it up. "Then thank you," I said. "Just fair warning, my grades are a disaster, so try not to lose your mind if I don't get things right away." Sarah was smart, sure, but she was a terrible teacher. If I didn't grasp something instantly, she'd start with the insults. Honestly, my grades were decent before she took over. She just spent years tearing down my confidence until I started believing I was stupid. "I promise I won't do that," she said. "I'll come over every day after school." I noticed she was barely eating, so I served her some more food. "Relax, Chloe. You don't have to be so formal around me anymore." Right on cue, Sarah walked in after her little date with Tyler. She'd obviously already talked to her dad because she looked like she was about to explode. When she saw us already halfway through dinner, her jaw practically hit the floor. I didn't even stop chewing. Sarah was clearly ready to scream about her father being fired, but the sight of Chloe sitting in her usual spot stopped her cold. "What's she doing here?" she snapped. I used to be so obsessed with keeping Sarah happy that I wouldn't even look at another girl. I'd kicked Chloe out of this house 100 times. Sarah definitely didn't expect to see her having a 5-course meal with me. "She's my guest," I said. "Got a problem with that?" Sarah was speechless. Chloe just stayed quiet, watching the drama unfold. I looked at Sarah and shrugged. "Stop overthinking it. It's not always about you." I used to act like the world revolved around her. Now, looking at her just made me feel sick. I realized that being with someone like her was a one-way ticket to a miserable life. If you're trying to make me jealous by hanging out with her, Morrison, it's not working, she scoffed. In fact, please stay with her. Maybe then you'll finally stop breathing down my neck every 5 seconds. She stomped up the stairs and slammed her door. I just shook my head. Chloe was looking at me with a very odd expression. Ignore her, I said quickly. She likes the sound of her own voice. I hoped she didn't take Sarah's bait, but it was hard to tell. Chloe was suddenly much more reserved for the rest of the meal. When we finished, I walked her to the car. Drive safe, I told her. Okay, she replied, slipping back into her quiet shell. I went back inside, just as Sarah was coming down the stairs, having changed into a casual shirt. Even though she was a nightmare of a person, she had that innocent face that could fool anyone. It had certainly worked on me for years. Why did you fire my dad? She demanded as she reached the bottom step. She'd waited until Chloe was gone because she couldn't risk anyone finding out her father was the help. I didn't realize I had to clear my hiring and firing decisions with you, I said flatly. He's my father, she yelled. If you're mad about what happened today, blame me. I told him to drive off. If you want to be a jerk, take it out on me. Go ahead, fire me. The idea of finally getting her out of my life was the best thing I'd heard all day. I looked her in the eyes. Fine, you're fired. Sera froze. What did you just say? You think I'm an idiot, right? So let's stop wasting each other's time. Pack your bags and get out of the guest house. I'm finding a new tutor. My grades have actually tanked since you took over. You're definitely not worth the insane salary I've been paying you. She tried to look like she didn't care, but I could see the panic starting to set in. She finally realized I wasn't bluffing. Your grades are bad because you're an idiot, she snapped, losing her cool. I explained things once to Tyler, and he gets it. You're as thick as a brick, and you're trying to blame me for your own stupidity. I didn't even flinch. Just get out of my house, Sarah. She tried to change tactics, putting on her concerned tutor voice. Morrison, you're a student. You need to focus on your education, not these petty tantrums. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with the idea of us dating, you wouldn't be failing all your classes. I just looked at her, baffled. She scoffed. All these stunts you're pulling, it's just because you can't handle me being with Tyler. You're acting out because I won't be your girlfriend. But I have a future to think about. I'm going to a top-tier university. I'm not like you, Morrison. You could just buy your way through life. That's exactly why we could never work. I actually had to stop and process the level of delusion she was operating on. Who told you I still wanted to be with you? Seriously, Sarah, where do you get this ego? What makes you think I'd even want to date you at this point? Without me bankrolling her life, she was a nobody. She just tossed her hair, thinking she still had the upper hand. Believe what you want. But I'm telling you now, if I see Chloe Sterling here for dinner again, don't expect me to ever speak to you again. She marched back to her room and slammed the door so hard the walls shook. The audacity of this girl to act like she owned the estate was unreal. I went straight to my room and called Mrs. Davis, telling her I wanted Sarah's stuff out of the guest house and on the curb by sunrise. I wasn't going to let a house guest treat me like garbage in my own home anymore. I pulled up Chloe's number, saved it, and sent her a quick iMessage asking if she made it home okay. I waited, but she didn't text back. I actually got to sleep in the next morning since I wasn't playing Tyler's personal chauffeur. I figured Sarah would have packed up and left, but when I walked down for breakfast, she was sitting there like nothing had happened. I sat down and dug into a real breakfast for once. Usually, I was so rushed trying to get Tyler's school on time that I'd just grab a protein bar. I looked up at her. What? No morning date with Tyler. We're just going to leave a few minutes early, she said, her voice tight. And we're just friends. Morrison, stop trying to start rumors. They've been hooking up for months, but they were still trying to play the just friends card. At our school, the top kids acted like dating was beneath them, a distraction from their Ivy League goals. If Tyler hadn't bragged about it in my previous life, I never would have known. I just looked at her, realizing she still thought I was the same gullible kid. I walked out to the driveway after breakfast, and Sarah was right on my heels. My new driver held the door open for me, and before I could even sit down, Sarah was already sliding into the seat next to me. I just stared at her. Sarah, what are you doing? Didn't you give me a whole speech yesterday about how you were never riding in this car again? I'm pretty sure I remember that part clearly. She just bit her lip and stared straight ahead. I knew the only reason she was there was because her dad had begged her to fix things so he wouldn't lose his paycheck. She was probably calling me every name in the book in her head. I didn't have the energy to argue, so I just told the driver to hit it. We pulled up to the school, and I hopped out, Sarah trailing along like a shadow. Tyler was already there, having survived his first bus ride. He spotted Sarah and ran over, giving me a suspicious look. After the stunt I pulled yesterday, he was clearly trying to figure out where I got the nerve to act like that. "So, you guys are good now?" he asked, looking between us. I didn't even acknowledge him as I walked straight into the building. Sarah watched me walk away, looking genuinely annoyed that I'd ignored her. "Just leave it, Tyler," she muttered. Tyler shook his head. "I'm telling you, you're too kind. You shouldn't let the help's kid treat you like that." "People are actually starting to whisper that Morrison is the one with the money," Tyler complained. Sarah just brushed it off. "Let them talk. Our families are close, and my dad asked me to keep an eye on him. I can't just abandon him, right?" Tyler seemed satisfied with that lie. When I reached my classroom, Leo Hudson was leaning against my desk, blocking my way. "Move," I said. He didn't budge. "You've got a lot of nerve, Morrison. Yesterday you just ditched Sarah and Tyler and drove off like you're somebody," he sneered. I couldn't help but laugh. "It's my car. I decide who gets a seat. And remind me again, who are you and why do you care?" The surrounding students started leaning in. "Wait, are you saying that Maybach actually belongs to you?" a girl asked. I just raised an eyebrow. "What does it look like?" Leo let out a loud, mocking laugh. "Morrison, come on. We all know the deal. You really think you can play the rich kid here? I heard the driver is your old man and your whole family is on the Miller's payroll. Sarah's only keeping you around because she's too nice to fire your dad. If I were you, I'd stop pushing my luck." Since Leo was Tyler's best friend, everyone in the room took his word as gospel. Sarah and Tyler walked in just as Leo was finishing his little speech. "Ça look incredibly inconfortable." She walked over and snapped at Leo. "Get back to your desk." Leo looked confused but did what he was told and backed off. Sarah took her seat next to me, but I didn't even look up from my book. I honestly couldn't have cared less where she sat. Sarah was such a teacher's pet that no one even blinked when she moved seats. Over at Tyler's desk, Leo was whispering, "Man, what is up with Sarah? Morrison is being a total jerk, and she's still defending him." Tyler sighed. Her dad made her promise to look after him. It's a family thing, nothing else. Leo nodded like he finally understood. "Oh, that explains it. No wonder he's acting so smug, even lying about owning the car. I mean, look at Sarah's phone. It's brand new. And the stuff she buys you isn't cheap either. Then you look at Morrison's phone. It's a total brick. No way that kid has money." I checked my screen and saw that Chloe had finally gotten back to me. All it said was K. I had to admit, it felt a little chilly. She seemed so worn the day before, but she was definitely keeping her distance today. It had taken her almost 12 hours just to send one letter. Sarah leaned over and caught the name Chloe on my screen. Serais beau furod. She could tell something was off. I was acting like a total stranger to her. I ignored her and typed out another message to Chloe. "Still coming over after school?" Her reply came back instantly. "K." As long as she showed up, I didn't care how many one-letter texts she sent. I spent the rest of the morning actually paying attention in class. When lunch rolled around, Tyler came by to pick up Sarah. Sarah paused by my desk before they left. "You're not coming to lunch?" She seemed genuinely shocked that I hadn't spent the whole morning napping for once. I didn't even look up from my notes. It was a complete 180. The guy who used to spend every second staring at her was now actually trying to learn something. When she asked again, I just kept writing, acting like she was invisible. Tyler nudged her. "If he wants to stay, let's go. We can always grab him a sandwich." I finally spoke up. "Don't bother." Tyler always played the nice guy role, but I knew better. He had this too-good-to-be-true attitude that people fell for, but I wasn't buying it. I didn't want anything from him. I packed my bag and walked out of the room before they could say another word. As they walked toward the cafeteria, Tyler turned to Sarah. "What is his problem? He's literally acting like you don't exist. Did you say something to him?" Sarah just shook her head, looking completely lost. Usually, I'd be trailing behind her regardless of how she treated me. But ever since I woke up, I'd been treating her like a stranger. She couldn't wrap her head around it. Tyler changed the subject. By the way, is he coming to your birthday party this weekend? Her birthday was coming up, and last year's bash at the Grand Pierre had been the event of the season. I had personally booked the ballroom and paid for every single detail, then let her take all the credit. It cost a small fortune, and people were still talking about how lucky they would be on the guest list. I'd already set everything up for this year, too. But after I threatened to fire her and her dad, Sarah was clearly starting to sweat the details. She was realized that without me, there was no party. She watched me walk down the hall, trying to convince herself that I'd still show up. What am I even thinking? He'd never miss my birthday, she thought. She convinced herself I was just playing hard to get to make some big grand gesture later. She turned to Tyler and smiled. He'll be there. He wouldn't miss it for the world. You're right, Tyler said. He's like a shadow on your birthday. That afternoon, they had a rehearsal for the school gala. I didn't wait around for the performance to end. I just went straight home. Chloe was already waiting for me in the driveway with Snowy. Seeing them there brought a genuine smile to my face. After everything that happened in my past life, being around her felt like the only thing that made sense. Chloe looked a bit startled when I smiled at her. She was so used to me being a jerk that my new attitude was clearly throwing her for a loop. She looked down at her shoes as I walked up. A little early today, aren't you? I teased. A little, she admitted. Should we get started in the study? I led the way upstairs. I'd actually taken a lot of notes today, and I was hoping she could help me make sense of some of the harder topics. We sat down at the large oak desk. That chair used to be Sarah's, but she'd spent most of her time there sighing and telling me I was a lost cause instead of actually helping me. Chloe pulled out a few diagnostic tests to see exactly where I was struggling. I actually put in the effort and finished them as quickly as I could. She took the papers and started grading them in silence. I felt a bit embarrassed as the silence stretched on. Sorry, I know I'm probably behind. Chloe looked up. It's not that you're behind, Morrison. Your study habits are just all over the place. Let's start with the basics and build up. I nodded, ready to work. As she explained the concepts, she kept her eyes on the pages, but her teaching style was amazing. Things that used to sound like gibberish when Sarah explained them suddenly started making perfect sense. After about an hour, I was starting to lose my focus. Chloe looked up and caught me just watching her. She cleared her throat, her face flushing slightly as she turned back to the book. Did I lose you? Do you have a question? I was just thinking about how patient you are, I said. But your texting style is brutal. I'm just getting one-word replies. Are you still mad at me for how I acted when I was obsessed with Sarah? She immediately shook her head. Not at all. My family was in town yesterday, so I was offline. I didn't even see your text until this morning. If it's urgent, just call me next time. My phone started buzzing on the desk right as we were about to dive back in. I picked it up and saw Sarah's name. Morrison, seriously? What is your problem now? I asked, already annoyed. You actually had that woman throw all my belongings onto the street, she screamed. I caught Chloe's eye and spoke into the receiver. I told you yesterday you were fired. That means your lease on the guest house is up. I'm busy right now, so stop calling me. I ended the call before she could respond. I could just imagine her standing at the gate, staring at her boxes on the sidewalk in total disbelief. She never thought I'd actually follow through. I set my phone face down. Sorry about that. Where were we? Chloe nodded, but a few minutes later, the door burst open. Sarah was standing there, looking like she was about to commit a crime. She glared at the two of us, her eyes full of venom. I stood up, my arms crossed. What are you doing here? I thought I was too stupid for you. Why are you acting so desperate? Sarah marched into the room. Morrison, do you think humiliating me like this is some kind of game? Chloe stood up as well, subtly moving to my side. Humiliate you? I repeated. I think you've got it backwards, Sarah. I've been the one getting humiliated by you for years. I've been bankrolling your entire life while you and Tyler paraded around right in front of me. You treated me like your personal servant while you lived off my family's money. You don't think that was humiliating for me? Now that I was actually setting boundaries, she was playing the victim. Cela est fast twisted. If you think using Chloe to make me jealous is going to work, you're wrong. I will never date you, Morrison. Never. Let me be 100% clear. I'm with Tyler, and I will never have feelings for a guy like you. She turned on her heel to storm out, but she was so mad, she actually clipped the door frame on her way. I walked to the window and watched her stomp across the lawn. She grabbed her boxes and marched toward the gate without looking back. Good riddance. She'd always played the proud but poor card, acting like she was doing me a favor by taking my money. I used to find that pride attractive. Now it just looked like a joke. Chloe was watching me from the desk. "Morrison," she said softly. I turned around and took my seat. "Sorry about the drama. Let's get back to work." She looked genuinely worried. "Maybe we should call it a day? You seem pretty stressed." "Actually, I'm doing great," I said. I wasn't upset about Sarah. I was just thinking about how much time I'd wasted in my past life being a fool. Seeing her finally leave was a huge weight off my shoulders. It meant I actually had a future now, one where I wasn't going to end up sick and dying alone. "I should probably get going," Chloe said, standing up. I reached out and caught her hand before she could leave. She stopped, looking at me with a startled expression. "Is everything okay?" I asked. I could tell something was bothering her. Every time Sarah caused a scene, Chloe would try to create distance between us. I knew everyone in school still thought I was head over heels for Sarah, and Chloe probably believed it too. And I had been once upon a time. But dying a slow, lonely death tends to change your perspective. I let go of her hand slowly. "Are you busy this Saturday? I'm heading to the Grand Pierre for dinner. I'd love it if you came with me." The food there was world class, and after my previous life of literal starvation, I wanted to experience every bit of it. I used to save all the fancy dinners for Sarah, but those days were over. Chloe was the one who actually deserved to be there. Plus, she was the girl my father wanted me to be with. And if I played my cards right, we actually had a future together. I used to think my dad was trying to control me, but I was just blind. Chloe was stunning, brilliant, and from a great family. If she was actually interested in me, I was the luckiest guy in the room. "Wait, you're going with Sarah?" she asked softly. I looked at her. "Is that what you want? You want me to go back to ignoring you so I can chase after her?" "Of course not," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Then it's a date," I told her. "I'll see you Saturday." The day of her dinner came, and I found myself running a few minutes behind schedule. I walked into the lobby of the Grand Pierre and immediately spotted a group from school all decked out in formal wear. Leo Hudson, Tyler's right-hand man, let out a loud, mocking laugh the second he saw me. "Morrison, you've actually got the balls to show up here." I just looked at him. Why wouldn't I be here? My father is close friends with the owner. I'm a regular here. The real question is, how did you guys get past the doorman? Leo sneered at me. "Sarah hasn't spoken to you in 48 hours, and yet here you are, crashing her birthday party like a pathetic stalker." Sarah's birthday. I'd actually completely forgotten it was today. I'd been so buried in textbooks that the date hadn't even registered. I'd actually made all the reservations for her 18th birthday weeks ago. In my previous life, that party was the talk of the school for months. But that was also the day I finally found out about her and Tyler. When I asked her about it, she didn't even try to lie. "Tyler and I are together, Morrison. Get over it and stop trying to control my life." I remember being so angry I tried to ignore her, but I only lasted 2 days before I was the one crawling back and apologizing. After that, they didn't even bother hiding it anymore. They rubbed it in my face every chance they got. I was so pathetic back then that I actually begged her to choose me. I literally handed her the keys to my father's empire just to get her to say I do. I can't believe I was that much of an idiot. I looked at the crowd and decided I wasn't going to waste a single second on them. I'd already paid for the entire event, and even after everything, she still had the nerve to show up and start charging things to my account. I was actually looking forward to seeing how she'd handle the check at the end of the night. I brushed past the group and headed for the elevator. I had a private table booked with Chloe and wanted to see if she was already there. The elevator doors opened, and the first thing I saw was Sarah and Tyler laughing together. Her eyes locked onto mine instantly, and she had this look of pure triumph on her face as she walked over to me. "I knew you couldn't stay away," she said, her voice dripping with ego. "Didn't you make a big scene about not coming? Just so you know, being here doesn't mean I'm forgiving you. I'm still very much done with you." It was the same old tactic, using her fake outrage to try and make me fold. I just gave her a bored look. "Can I help you with something?" "Oh, please. You're here for the party," she said. I shrugged. Why? I wasn't on the guest list, was I? You've got plenty of friends here to keep you company. I'm sure you won't even notice I'm not there. Morrison, what is your problem? She snapped. She was convinced I was just being difficult to ruin her big night. Right then, the manager spotted me and walked over. Mr. Carter, good to see you, he said. Is Miss Sterling in? I asked. He nodded. Right this way, sir. As the manager started leading me toward our private room, Sarah actually followed us. Morrison, are you seriously still playing this game with her? She hissed. Is she really that desperate for your attention? I stopped and looked at her. I'm not the one causing a scene here, Sarah. You're the one who told me I was annoying and to stay away. I'm finally doing what you asked. So why are you still talking to me? Go back to your boyfriend. Tyler was standing a few feet away, looking like he wanted to intervene, but was too scared to move. He'd never seen her this worked up over me. I knew the truth, though. She didn't care about me. She was just terrified of losing her source of income. She never actually cared for me, but she loved the lifestyle I gave her. She'd always play the I don't need expensive things card while making sure she never missed a single benefit. Now that the fountain was drying up, she was starting to spiral. She'd spent weeks bragging about this party. She couldn't afford for it to go wrong now. Look, if this is because of Tyler, she whispered, I can tell him to leave. We could just be together like before. Will that make you happy? I couldn't believe it. She was actually trying to negotiate. It was pathetic how much she cared about this party. She'd spent so much time crafting her fake rich girl image that she was willing to do anything to keep the charade going. She was finally feeling the pressure of being exposed. Watching her scramble after years of acting like she was better than me was almost poetic. I gave her a slow nod. It's your birthday, Sarah. Wouldn't want everyone to see you lose it, would we? I turned to the manager. I have the Emerald Ballroom reserved for Sarah Miller. He checked his tablet. Correct, Mr. Carter. Everything is set for Miss Miller's event. I looked back at her. Does that work for you? She let out a long breath, finally relaxing. Then she gave me a smug look. So that's what this was? You just wanted to force Tyler out of the picture. You really are obsessed. You're delusional. I couldn't care less who you're dating. But you'll find out soon enough that without me, you're absolutely nothing. Even the manager looked awkward at that. Sarah's face flushed with shame. I'm finished with you, she snapped before storming back to her friends. The manager turned to me. Shall we proceed with the Emerald Ballroom, sir? I nodded. Absolutely. But let's be clear. She's responsible for the entire bill. Don't let a single guest leave the building until she clears the payment herself. I understand perfectly, sir. I left him to his job and finally went to our table. Sarah walked back to Tyler, looking like she'd just swallowed a lemon. What was that about? Tyler asked. Nothing, she snapped. She looked at Tyler, who was busy trying to cater to her every whim. Break up with him? Not a chance, she thought. She decided that after this party was over, she was going to cut me out of her life permanently. Chloe had actually dressed up for the occasion. She was wearing a simple pleated skirt that looked like it cost more than my first car. She was buried in the menu when I finally made it to the table. She looked up as I sat down, her eyes locking onto mine. I gave her a real smile. Sorry, did I keep you waiting? No, I just sat down, she said, her gaze lingering on me for a second longer than usual. I was just in a crisp white tee, and even though I was still a little on the lean side, I felt good. I pulled my chair up right next to hers. She definitely wasn't expecting me to sit that close, and I could tell she was a bit rattled. There was a whole table available, but I wanted to be near her. I didn't even realize I was making her nervous. Seen anything good on the menu? I asked. I'm still deciding, she said, her voice a bit shaky. Let me take a look. I leaned over, my shoulder brushing hers as I looked at the menu she was holding. Chloe went completely still. She wasn't even looking at the food anymore. She was too busy noticing the scent of my shampoo. I picked out a few of the spiciest things on the menu. I needed that kick to remind me that this was real. The memories of the hunger and the cold from my past life still haunted me, and sometimes I'd wake up in a cold sweat thinking I was back in that dingy apartment. The heat started to kick in, so I had to fan my mouth and grab some watermelon juice to cool down. Chloe watched me with a little smile. Big fan of spicy food. It keeps things interesting, I said, catching her eye. I'm a fan too, she said, actually helping herself to some of the spicier plates. We were tucked away in a private dining room with a personal server. About 10 minutes in, the owner of the hotel made an appearance. His name was Mr. Wallace, a longtime associate of my family. "Mr. Wallace, good to see you," I said. He gave me a friendly nod. "Morrison, nice to see you're dining with us." But I could tell I wasn't the main attraction. He immediately turned his attention to Chloe. "Miss Sterling, it is an honor to have you at the Grand Pierre. If there is anything we can do to make your evening better, don't hesitate to ask." He knew her family's standing in New York better than anyone. Nobody in this town realized they had a billionaire New York heiress sitting right in their midst. Chloe just gave him a polite, minimal nod and went back to her dinner. She was the definition of low profile. I was starting to get used to her being open with me, but seeing her with Mr. Wallace reminded me how icy she could be to everyone else. He even poured her water personally, but she didn't offer him more than a thank you. Mr. Wallace finally got the message. "I'll let you two enjoy your dinner. Morrison, let me know if you need anything." "Actually, Mr. Wallace," I said, stopping him as he reached the door. He turned around. "Yes, Morrison, he was a good man, and I genuinely liked him. But I had this sudden, terrifying memory of my past life. 2 days after Sarah's birthday, this entire hotel had been gutted by a massive kitchen fire. When the fire broke out, the safety systems failed completely. People were seriously injured, and the resulting scandal was the end of the Grand Pierre. It went from a city's crown jewel to a pile of ash and lawsuits overnight. I remember hearing that the stress of it all eventually killed Mr. Wallace. I looked him in the eyes. "Mr. Wallace, have you had the fire safety systems checked recently? Are they actually up to code?" He looked completely blindsided. "That's an odd thing to ask, Morrison. Why the concern? I've just had a bad feeling about it lately. It might be worth doing a full inspection of the kitchens," I suggested. He gave me a reassuring smile. "I appreciate the concern, but we have top-of-the-line equipment. Our guests are perfectly safe." I didn't back down. "Mr. Wallace, do me a favor. Go and check the extinguishers yourself, just to be certain." His smile faded, and I could tell he was getting irritated. "Where are you getting at? Are you calling me a liar? I've known your father for 20 years. He knows how I run my business. You're questioning my integrity now." He looked at me like I was just some spoiled kid who didn't know his place. Suddenly, Chloe spoke up. "If he's this insistent, what's the harm in taking 5 minutes to check?" She'd been completely silent until that moment. The change in Mr. Wallace was instant. He wouldn't listen to me, but he wasn't about to say no to a Sterling. "Of course, Miss Sterling. I'll take a look personally." Chloe had this natural authority that most adults couldn't even match. Once the door closed, I turned to her. "Thanks for that. Why did you take my side?" I knew the truth, but she had no reason to think I wasn't just being paranoid. Chloe just shrugged. "You seemed like you needed the support. That's enough for me. You weren't worried I was just making things up for attention." I asked. "So what if you were?" she said simply. "He spends 10 minutes checking some equipment. No one gets hurt. It's not a big deal." She made it sound so simple, but I felt this massive wave of relief. For the first time, someone actually trusted my judgment. I thought back to the end of my last life when I was diagnosed. Nobody believed I'd been set up. They just assumed I'd been living a reckless life. Everyone looked at me like I was a monster until I started believing them. I hadn't even suspected the truth back then, that Sarah had literally hired someone to prick me with a tainted needle. She just wanted a way out of the engagement so she could keep the money. The only person who knew I was innocent was the one who destroyed me. Chloe and I ended up talking for hours. We stayed for dessert, and I even pulled out my SAT prep book so we could go over a few sections together. She was actually a much better teacher than Sarah ever was. By the time we were finishing up, the party down the hall was finally winding down. But when the guests tried to leave, security stopped them at the door. Sarah hadn't settled the bill. My phone started vibrating, but I just let it ring. Chloe raised an eyebrow. "Aren't you going to get that?" "I know exactly who it is," I said, watching the screen light up again and again. On the third try, I finally swiped to answer. "Morrison, are you insane? What's going on?" Sarah was screaming so loud, I had to hold the phone away from my ear. The more she yelled, the more I enjoyed it. I was done with her, but after what she did to me in my last life, I wasn't about to let her off easy. I just smirked. Happy birthday, Sarah. You sound a little stressed. Get down here and settle this tab right now, she hissed, trying to keep her voice down in front of her guests. Stop embarrassing me. She thought she could just enjoy the party I paid for and then ghost me. She never saw this coming. Now she was trapped in a five-star ballroom with no way to pay, and all her elite friends were starting to whisper. That's weird, I said. I wasn't even invited to the party. Why would I be the one paying for it? Why don't you just ask your besties to chip in? I mean, you're always treating them. I'm sure they'd love to return the favor. I've been giving her an allowance for years that she called her tutoring fee. She'd use it to buy drinks and dinners for the popular crowd, making everyone think she was some wealthy socialite. Everyone wanted to be her friend because she was always the one with the black card. But every cent of it was mine. Morrison, please don't do this, she begged, her voice finally breaking. What do you want? I'll do whatever you say. Just come down here and pay this bill before someone sees. You know, I mused. If you're asking for help, you might want to try using a nicer tone. You're not the one in charge here. I could practically hear her teeth grinding through the phone. She couldn't handle the fact that her doormat was finally standing up. Still nothing? Okay, talk to you later, I said, moving to hang up. Wait, please. I'm begging you, Morrison, she blurted out. Security was already surrounding the group. I hung up, gave Chloe a quick smile, and said, give me 5 minutes. I strolled down to the Emerald Ballroom. The whole class was still trapped inside, looking more than a little uncomfortable. All eyes were on Sarah, who was looking smaller by the second as she stared at the unpaid check. She was finally feeling the weight of her own lies. The manager stepped toward me the moment I walked in. Mr. Carter, he said with a slight bow. I took a slow look around the room at all the kids in their designer suits and dresses. They'd been so bold earlier that day, but they all looked like they wanted to disappear now. There's nothing like an unpaid bill to ruin an elite party. I let out a light laugh. Why the long faces? I thought this was the party of the year. I looked directly at Sarah, whose face was a mask of pure rage and humiliation. Tyler was hovering near her, looking completely useless. Miss Miller has yet to provide payment for the event, the manager said calmly. I'm just waiting for the situation to be resolved. I see, I said, pulling out my wallet. Well, let's not make a scene. These are my classmates, after all. I'll take care of it. I handed my Centurion card to the manager, and the room went completely silent. You could practically see the gears turning in everyone's heads. Sarah had been playing the rich girl for years, but here she was, unable to pay for her own birthday party until the servant's son stepped in. Sarah looked like she was about to burst into tears of pure shame. She finally realized I wasn't there as her knight in shining armor. I was there to pull the rug out from under her and show everyone exactly who was paying for her lifestyle. I could have settled this in the office, but I wanted everyone to see the card swipe. She looked at me with pure hatred, probably thinking I'd lost my mind. The manager returned a moment later with my receipt. All processed, Mr. Carter, he said. I looked at the total and made sure my voice carried across the ballroom. $86,000? That's quite a party. Happy birthday, Sarah. Consider this my final gift to you. I don't mind bankrolling you, but I think it's a bit much to ask me to pay for your boyfriend's steak dinner, don't you think? I looked right at Tyler, who looked like he was about to faint. The whisper network in the room was going crazy. Was Sarah actually broke? Was Morrison the one with the money? The entire social hierarchy of the school was collapsing in real time. Leo finally found his voice and stepped forward. Morrison, what are you even saying? We all know you're just the guy who handles Sarah's accounts. You're the driver's kid, for God's sake. Stop acting like it's your money. Leo, does your family let the help manage their millions? I asked with a smirk. Let's clear this up once and for all. I'm not the servant. Her father was my family's driver. The same one who ditched me at school to drive his daughter and her boyfriend around on my dime. And just so you know, he's already been fired. If you don't believe me, why don't you ask Queen Sarah yourself? I looked at her, waiting for a response. She just stared at me, her eyes burning with pure malice. She'd grown up poor, but she'd never been this exposed. The kids she'd spent months trying to impress were now snickering behind her back. She stayed silent, knowing that if she opened her mouth, I could walk right back to the front desk and void that transaction. Without a word, She turned and stormed out of the ballroom. Tyler, looking like he wanted to crawl into a hole, rushed after her. The whole situation had turned into a total disaster for them. Just a few hours ago, he was the king of the school, bragging about landing the richest girl in town. He thought he'd hit the jackpot. He never dreamed she was just the helps kid. The realization that their entire relationship was built on a lie was clearly hitting him hard. I turned to the rest of the room. The bill's paid. Feel free to head home, guys. It's getting late. They didn't need to be told twice. They filed out in a hurry, not even looking me in the eye. I waited until the room was empty before heading back to the lobby. The manager walked me to the elevators where Chloe was already waiting. We stepped into the car, and I stayed silent as we descended. Setting the record straight felt okay, but it didn't fix the years of damage she'd done. A single night of embarrassment for her didn't really balance the scales for everything I'd lost in my past life. Chloe seemed to sense I needed a minute and didn't push. When the doors opened, Mr. Wallace was standing there waiting for us. He made a beeline for me, and this time, he wasn't looking for Chloe. "Mr. Wallace?" I said. He actually grabbed my hand in both of his. "Morrison, thank you. Seriously, you have no idea what you just saved us from." I went down to the kitchens myself. The fire suppression system was a joke. My cousin was supposed to be maintaining it, and he'd been faking the logs for months. I fired him on the spot. I felt a huge weight lift off my chest. "I'm just glad everyone's safe." He gave me a puzzled look. "But really, how did you know? It's such a specific thing to bring up." I had to think fast. Honestly, I just had a really vivid nightmare about it last night. I couldn't shake it. Mr. Wallace laughed, clearly not believing me, but letting it slide. "Whatever the reason, I'm in your debt. I had the staff put together a little something for you, too." His assistant handed us 2 high-end gift bags. "If there's ever anything I can do for you, you just let me know," he promised. I knew I'd just made a very powerful ally. He walked us to the front, where Chloe's driver was already idling. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window, watching the city lights blur by. Usually, Chloe and I could talk for hours, but tonight, the atmosphere was different, thick with things left unsaid. Chloe stayed quiet, but I could tell she was running everything through her head. Between me predicting a fire and the absolute chaos in the ballroom, she had a lot to process. It was Sarah's birthday, a day I used to treat like a national holiday, and I'd spent every second of it with Chloe instead. On top of that, I'd completely dismantled Sarah's reputation. There was no going back now. She probably wondered why I wasn't celebrating. But the sadness was only temporary. I had a second chance, and I wasn't going to let the shadows of the past ruin my new life. I could fix everything this time around, as long as I kept my head on straight. But the mental toll of the last few weeks was finally catching up to me. Between the SAT prep and the rebirth, I was absolutely exhausted. Without even realizing it, my head slumped over onto Chloe's shoulder. I felt her go completely rigid, but she didn't push me away. She stayed perfectly still the entire ride, even though her arm must have been falling asleep. She didn't want to wake me up. "Miss, we're here," the driver whispered as he pulled in my driveway. Chloe looked at the house, then down at me, clearly unsure of what to do. The driver was already standing by the door, but Chloe didn't move an inch. I finally stirred as the engine cut out. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and realized we were parked in my driveway. I looked at Chloe, who was suddenly very interested in the back of the driver's seat. She wouldn't even look at me. I stretched my neck and sat up. "Oh, we're home." She just gave a tiny nod. "Why didn't you just shake me awake?" I asked. "You look like you really needed the rest," she said, her voice perfectly level. But I caught that telltale pink glow on her ears again. I was starting to realize just how deep her shyness went. "Chloe," I said softly. She finally met my eyes. "Are you afraid of me?" "No," she whispered. "Then why do you always look away? You act like being near me is a chore." She cleared her throat, looking flustered. "I'm just not used to people being in my personal space. So, am I the first person to get this close?" I teased. I grinned. "If it's so uncomfortable, why didn't you just shove me off your shoulder?" Chloe dodged the question and looked away. "Why did you really end things with Sarah? Everyone thought she was your first love." That caught me off guard. I looked out at the quiet street. I just woke up and realized she wasn't who I thought she was. It's that simple, I said. Anyway, I should go in. I was just stepping out when the front doors opened and my dad, Mr. Carter, walked out onto the porch. My whole face lit up. Dad, when did you get back? My father was a workaholic, so the house was usually empty. He'd always spoiled me rotten, letting me get away with almost anything as long as I was smiling. I used to take that for granted. In my previous life, he tried to tell me Sarah was trouble, but I just yelled at him to stay out of my business. Seeing him now made me feel incredibly lucky to have a second chance with him. Standing there looking at him, everything I'd been through in my other life just hit me at once. I ran up and hugged him, totally breaking down. He's the only person I can actually be vulnerable around. He was ready to give me a lecture about my curfew, but the second he saw me crying, he went into full dad mode. Hey, Morrison, what is it? Did someone say something to you? Was it that Miller girl? I know about the firing, he said, his voice dropping an octave. I just shook my head and held on tighter. No, I just really missed you. He laughed softly. You're a weird kid sometimes. He looked over at the driveway. Wait, is that a Sterling car? I looked back and realized Chloe was still standing there. I quickly wiped my eyes, feeling like an idiot for crying in front of her. Chloe gave me a lift, I said. We went out for dinner. My dad looked like he'd just seen a miracle. The last time we talked about Chloe, I told him I'd rather go to military school than spend a minute with her. Now, here we were, actually hanging out. He didn't know why I'd changed my mind, but he was clearly thrilled. Chloe, don't just stand there. Come in for a drink, he called out. Good evening, Mr. Carter, she said with a polite smile. Thank you, but I should really get back. My uncle is expecting me. She gave me one last look before disappearing into the car. We walked inside, and Dad immediately turned to me. Did she say something? Why were you crying? I shook my head. No, Chloe's been amazing. Honestly, I sat down and looked at him. He looked so healthy, so full of life. In my memories of the end, he was always so tired and worn down by the business and my mistakes. Dad grilled me for another 20 minutes to make sure I wasn't being bullied. The next morning, I was barely awake when Mrs. Davis knocked on my door to tell me Sarah was downstairs. I thought back to the ballroom scene. I made it pretty clear we were through. I couldn't believe she actually had the audacity to show up at my front door after that. I walked down and found her father, Mr. Miller, sitting on the sofa, looking pathetic. Mr. Carter, please, he was saying to my dad. Sarah was just being a typical teenager. I disciplined her. She won't cause any more trouble for Morrison. My father's eyes narrowed. You're on a first-name basis with my son now. He'd never liked the man, but he'd tolerated him for years just because I was so attached to his daughter. Mr. Miller turned pale. Sir, of course, young Master Morrison. He spotted me on the stairs and jumped up. Morrison, good morning. Sarah is here to personally apologize for everything. I looked at Sarah. She was slumped in a chair, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. She didn't look sorry. She looked like she was being forced to attend a funeral. She obviously still wanted to kill me for the ballroom stunt. Let's not waste time, Mr. Miller, I said. Sarah doesn't owe me anything. We're past the point of apologies. But the tutoring, Mr. Miller started, his voice shaking. He wasn't this upset when he lost his own job. Sarah's tutoring fee was the biggest check they'd ever seen. He'd been counting on her marrying into my family's money. He wasn't going to let that dream die without a fight. She was supposed to be helping me, I said, but my grades have consistently dropped since she started. And frankly, Sarah told me herself that she didn't want the job. She said I was too stupid to learn, so I'm just giving her what she wanted. No hard feelings. My dad looked at me, impressed by how cool I was playing it. He remembered how I'd practically thrown a tantrum to get her hired in the first place. Seeing me finally stand my ground made him look proud for the first time in years. I have class, I said, ending the meeting. Dad signaled for security to show them the door. I grabbed my bag and headed out to the car. As we drove past the front gates, I saw Sarah and her dad on the sidewalk. Mr. Miller wasn't acting like a concerned parent anymore. He swung his hand and slapped her right across the face. I knew the background. Her dad had gambled away everything they ever had, and her mom had walked out years ago. Sarah had basically raised herself while dodging debt collectors. She was a survivor. I'll give her that. The fact that she could keep her grades at the top of the class while dealing with that home life was impressive. That was why I tried so hard to help her. I wanted to give her the life she deserved. But while I was busy feeling sorry for her, she was busy using me. To her, I was just a bank account with a face. She never cared about Morrison Carter. I turned my head and didn't look back. The vibe at school had shifted completely. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be my friend. Morrison, seriously, how much is your dad actually worth? One guy asked. Wait, so every time Sarah bought us drinks, it was actually your money? We all thought she was the one with the trust fund. I just smirked. Took you guys long enough to catch on. It's just crazy. You did everything for her, and she was still sneaking around with Tyler, a girl asked. Another one chimed in with a laugh. Hey, Morrison, if you're looking for a new girlfriend, I'm much lower maintenance than Sarah. I was actually laughing with the girl when Sarah walked in. She caught the end of the conversation and sneered. In your dreams. Like he'd ever look at someone like you. He's already moved on to someone else. You'll have to wait your turn, she snapped. The whole group turned to me. Wait, you're dating someone new already? Who could it be? To most people, Sarah was still the peak. She was gorgeous and brilliant, even if she wasn't rich. They still thought she was going to be the next big thing. Sarah ignored the other girls and stared me down. So this is the new Morrison? You're going to treat me like trash just because I wouldn't be your girlfriend? You can try to buy my affection all you want, but it won't work. You're just a spoiled brat with failing grades who thinks money solves everything. You aren't half the man Tyler is. She was trying to remind everyone that I was the class idiot. And about that party, you were the one who insisted I invite the whole class. I didn't even want to be there, she lied. Then you turn around and humiliate everyone for no reason. Do you really think having a bank account gives you the right to treat people like garbage? And let's be clear, I wasn't living off you. That was my salary for trying to teach you something. I'm not taking another dime from your family, and don't expect me to ever help you again. She made a big show of moving her things to the other side of the room to get away from me. There it was, the untouchable ice queen act she always used when she wanted to win an argument. But I could still hear her voice through the phone from last night, literally sobbing for me to help her. I actually felt a little bad for her when her dad hit her this morning. Now, I was starting to think she deserved it. I wasn't going to let her have the last word. Tutoring? You got to be kidding me. In 3 years, have you actually taught me a single thing besides how to pay for your lifestyle? The only thing I've learned from you is how to fail every exam. It's funny how my grades were actually better before you started helping me. Sarah just looked at me with cold eyes. You're failing because you're an idiot, Morrison. If you're so rich, maybe you should try buying new brain. I got a laugh from the rest of the class. I just stared her down. Are you sure I'm the problem? Or are you just a terrible teacher? Sarah knew Chloe was helping me now. She let out a sarcastic snort. Fina, if you're so confident, let's see your results on the midterms. If you can move up even 100 spots in the rankings, I'll admit I was the failure. She was convinced that no one, not even Chloe Sterling, could help me. You've got yourself a deal, I said. The fact that she only bet on 100 spots showed she thought I was a total lost cause. You heard him, she shouted to the room. If Morrison moves up 100 spots, I'll run a 10K on the track in front of everyone. The class went wild. Leo looked at me and grinned. If Sarah's putting a 10K on the line, you should do the same. Unless you're too scared to put your money where your mouth is. I looked him right in the eye. Fine by me. Moving up 100 spots isn't exactly a miracle. After just a few sessions with Chloe, I already felt more confident than I ever did with Sarah. I didn't even hesitate. I needed the motivation anyway. Sarah just laughed and shook her head. You really are a fool, she whispered before sitting back down. She was already counting her victory. She'd spent years making sure I felt like a failure, so she was certain I'd lose. She was probably already picturing me collapsing on the track. Right then, Tyler walked into the room. He'd been listening from the hall. After a night of dwelling on her being broke, he'd reached a conclusion. Sarah was still the smartest, most beautiful girl in school. Being poor just made her scrappy and ambitious in his eyes. To him, she was a better bet than a useless rich kid like me. He was sure she'd be a CEO one day. He decided he was actually the lucky one. He walked straight over to her desk. Sarah, I don't care about the money, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. Your dad is a hard worker, and you're the smartest person I know. It's actually inspiring how much you've achieved. I'm with you no matter what." The whole class started to melt. Tyler was the hero, standing by his girl in her hour of need. It was like a scene from a bad teen movie. People went right back to worshiping her, convinced she was a brilliant underdog. She was the persevering genius, and I was just the entitled rich kid trying to bully her. Watching them play act this tragic romance was honestly hilarious. I had to look away just to keep from laughing out loud. It was beautiful, really. They truly deserved each other. I felt bad for ever trying to get between two people who were so perfectly matched in their delusion. Sarah had successfully convinced the class that I was both a jerk and a moron. I went from the driver's kid to the rich kid who's going to fail out. Honestly, I couldn't have cared less. After experiencing literal death and total abandonment, high school gossip felt like a joke. I had my family, I had my fortune, and I had a future to build. I put on my headphones and got to work. My parents both showed up to pick me up after school that day. They were in their late 40s, but they still looked like they just stepped off a yacht. They were easily the best-looking couple in town. My mom jumped out of the passenger seat and gave me a huge hug before holding the door open for me. Sarah and Tyler were walking out of the building right as we were leaving, taking in the whole scene. The group behind them started whispering immediately. "Wait, is that the new target Sarah was talking about?" one girl asked, looking at my mom. Tyler caught Sarah's eye, and her smirk told him everything he wanted to hear. He actually looked relieved. He'd always been insecure about my family's money, but now he had a reason to feel superior. He was convinced I was just some boy toy for an older woman. To him, that was much worse than being poor. He could hold his head high knowing he was working for his success while I was just selling myself. Tyler and Sarah headed for the bus stop. "I'm heading to work, Tyler. I'll see you later," she said. Since I cut off her tutoring income, she had to find a real job to cover her dad's gambling losses. My parents took me to get the latest iPhone before we headed to a steakhouse for dinner. Chloe was already at the table when we arrived. She was living in Greenwich with her uncle, who was one of my dad's oldest friends. This was the official meet the family's dinner that I'd been dodging for years. I used to think Sarah was the only girl in the world, so I'd always made an excuse to miss these. Dad looked so happy just to see me sitting there. He felt like I was finally becoming the man he wanted me to be. He and Mr. Sterling spent the whole night laughing and talking business. I sat beside Chloe and filled her in on the 10K bet. When I finished, she just gave me a small nod. I couldn't tell if she was impressed or just worried. "Do you think I'm in over my head? Is it too much?" I asked. She looked me in the eye. "No. So you think I can actually pull this off? I've really been getting the hang of the material." "Don't sweat it," Chloe said firmly. "I've got you. And for the record, you're actually very bright. You're definitely not an idiot, no matter what some people like to claim." I knew exactly who she was talking about. I felt a huge wave of relief. "Well, if you're sure, get ready to see a lot more of me for the next month." "I'm looking forward to it," she replied. Suddenly, I realized the entire table had stopped talking. My dad and Mr. Sterling were both grinning at us like we were in a rom-com. It was incredibly awkward. "Dad, can we help you with something?" I asked. "Nothing at all," he laughed. "Please, don't let us interrupt." Dad turned back to his conversation, but he was beaming. I think he was just relieved to see me actually getting along with Chloe. Even though he'd set us up, he looked like a proud father watching his son grow up. The adults were still talking shop, so Chloe and I decided to head out early. We found a little late-night cafe nearby. I grabbed us some ice cream and sat back down beside her. We went right back to my prep books. I was determined to win that bet. Running 10,000 meters sounded like a nightmare. "Here are your Sundays," a voice said. I looked up and nearly dropped my spoon. It was Sarah, wearing the cafe uniform. "Wait, you work here?" I asked. She shot me a look that could kill. "I could ask you the same thing. Did you follow me here just to cause more trouble?" she hissed. She was so convinced I was still in love with her that she thought a coffee shop run was a calculated move to see her. "Trust me, Sarah, you're the last person I wanted to see tonight. This is a total coincidence." She gave Chloe a look of pure disgust and marched back to the counter. I just watched her go, wondering how she could still act so superior while wearing a name tag and an apron. I pushed the ice cream toward Chloe, but she just stood up. "You finish it," she said, grabbing my bag. I could tell the mood was ruined. I wanted to stay, but seeing Sarah had sucked the air out of the room. For the next 14 days, I was a machine. Chloe was at my house every afternoon, and I was actually starting to master the material. Sarah couldn't handle seeing me actually work. Every time she saw me with a book, she'd lean over and whisper, "It's not too late to quit, Morrison. Save yourself the embarrassment of the 10K. You're boring me," I said, popping in my AirPods and turning the volume up. When the final exam was finally over, I felt like a weight had been lifted. I practically ran home. I didn't have my grade yet, but I knew I'd crushed it. Chloe was out back with a cup of tea, and Snowy was looking like he'd been getting way too many treats. I gave Snowy a quick scratch behind the ears. "Early today, aren't you?" I said to Chloe. She didn't even look up from her book. "I'm always here at this time, Morrison. I was just wondering, don't you have any clubs or after-school stuff?" I asked. Sarah and Tyler were always at some meeting or another, but Chloe was always just here. "I have an independent study arrangement," she explained. "They don't really care what I do as long as my work is in. I'm not really a club person anyway. Not even student council?" I asked. She shook her head. "I enter the academic decathlons and stuff, but that's it." "How come?" She just shrugged. "It's kind of boring, to be honest. Besides, my teachers think it's a bit unfair to the other kids if I join every single thing. It's better for everyone if I just show up for the big stuff." "But I know I've seen you at the math meets," I said. Sarah used to vent for hours about how you'd show up at her competitions and take first place every single time. That's probably the real reason she can't stand you. Chloe just took a slow sip of her tea and didn't say a word. I was dying for some feedback, so Chloe and I went over the unofficial answer key together. I'd actually nailed almost all of the difficult questions. When the official results finally came out the next day, the teacher walked in looking surprised. He started with the usual shout-out to Sarah and Tyler for taking the top 2 spots again. But then he paused. "However, there's one student who has made an absolutely unprecedented jump in the rankings. Morrison Carter." I leaned forward, my heart racing. Sarah rolled her eyes, clearly expecting him to announce I'd barely passed. "Morrison has made incredible strides," the teacher said. "He's gone from the bottom of the pile to a truly impressive score. He actually ranked in the top 200 for the whole grade. If he maintains this, he's going to crush the SATs." "The top 200? The entire class gasped. Sarah looked like she'd been slapped. She thought moving up 100 spots was a joke, but I just jumped nearly 400. Even I was surprised at how well I'd done. After everything I'd been through, I just didn't have it in me to be a slacker anymore. I was locked in. I didn't miss a single note in class and spent every night grinding with Chloe. She really was a genius. She could explain the hardest calculus problems like they were basic addition. Hard work was finally paying dividends. "Are you sure you didn't mix up the names, Mr. Higgins?" Leo blurted out. "I mean, it's Morrison. How is that even possible?" "The scores are final," the teacher said, giving me a genuine smile. He was probably just relieved I wasn't ruining his class average anymore. I couldn't help but feel a little smug. I looked over at Sarah, who was staring at me like I was a stranger. "So," I said, loud enough for her to hear, "still think I need a new brain? Don't forget, you've got some laps to run." Sarah just bit her lip, looking completely lost. She couldn't understand how I'd done it. She was probably wondering if Chloe had some kind of secret formula. After the final bell, she had no choice but to head to the track. I wasn't about to miss this. I grabbed a seat on the bleachers and watched her start those laps. Seeing her struggle out there while everyone watched was the best feeling in the world. Tyler was standing by the fence, looking like he wanted to punch something. Leo was whispering in his ear, "So what? It's only the top 200. He's acting like he just won a Nobel Prize. Sarah, and you're still the top 2, and you aren't being jerks about it." Tyler just kept his eyes on Sarah. "A deal's a deal," he muttered. "She'll finish it." "Exactly," Leo nodded. "Who cares about his GPA anyway? He still has to go home and play boy toy for that old woman. It's honestly sickening." "Drop it, Leo," Tyler said. Leo just patted him on the back. "You're too nice, man. Seriously." By the time Sarah finally crossed the finish line for the last time, it was almost dark. She was completely wiped out, drenched in sweat and barely able to breathe. She looked up at the bleachers and hissed, "Are you happy now?" I just gave her a thumbs up. "Nice pace." We should do this again sometime. I hopped down from the bleachers and headed for the parking lot with a huge grin on my face. Sarah just stood there, watching me walk away like I just won the lottery. She was so used to me being her little shadow, but now I didn't even look back. She started thinking about me and Chloe. Was I actually going to marry into the Sterling family? Our families were basically royalty. On paper, we were the perfect couple. The thought of me actually being with Chloe made Sarah feel physically ill. She felt like I was her property, and I was being stolen right out from under her. So, Tyler said, noticing her staring at the gate. You look beat. Here, have some water. Thanks, Tyler, she said, slipping back into her sweet persona. That was brutal, Tyler admitted. But seriously, how does a guy go from failing to the top 200 in 2 weeks? It doesn't add up. You think he pulled a fast one? Leo asked. I'd bet my life on it. He probably cheated just to make you look bad, Sarah. I mean, you literally lived with the guy and he couldn't pass a quiz. There's no way he did this legit. We don't know that for sure, Tyler said, though he looked like he wanted it to be true. If you accuse him without proof, his dad will sue you into next year. Leo just crossed his arms. I'm talking to the dean tomorrow. I was practically buzzing with energy on the ride home. I couldn't wait to tell Chloe we'd won. But when I walked in, Mrs. Davis told me that Chloe hadn't shown up. My heart sank a little. I changed into some sweats and headed to the dining room for a quiet dinner by myself. My dad was away on a business trip, so the house felt incredibly empty. I finally decided to just give her a call. Over at the Sterling estate, Chloe was doing laps in her pool. One of the staff members walked over with a cordless phone. Miss Sterling, you have a call. Chloe didn't even look up at first. It's Morrison Carter, the maid added. Chloe immediately stopped and swam over to the side. The maid wrapped a plush towel around her as she stepped out. Chloe took the phone, and that typical Ice Queen expression she wore for the staff completely vanished. Hey, she said, her voice warm. Hey, are you in the middle of something? I didn't want to bother you, I said. Just finish my laps, she replied. I missed you at the house today. Just wanted to check in and make sure we were still good. Just a family thing, she said shortly. I couldn't help but chuckle. Well, I got some news. I actually made the top 200, and the best part? Sarah had to run her 10,000 meters today. Watching her struggle through every lap was legendary. Chloe sat back on a lounge chair, listening as I went off about the test and the track. After a minute of me talking her ear off, I realized she was being very quiet. You still with me? I asked. I'm here. I'm listening, she said. Congratulations, Morrison. That's huge. I'm not keeping you, am I? No, I'm not doing anything else tonight. Look, you've been at my place every day for weeks. You deserve a break. Why don't you take a few days for yourself? I think I can handle the basics for a bit. If I hit a wall, I'll just DM you on Instagram. Okay, if you're sure, she said. Hey, Chloe. I added, wanting to keep her on the line. You sound a little off. Did something happen today? You know you can talk to me, right? I could hear her catch her breath. She probably thought she was doing a great job of hiding it. She definitely didn't expect me to be able to read her that well, just through a phone call. I know you like to play it close to the vest, but we're in this together now. You've done so much for me. Let me return the favor. I could hear the hesitation in her voice, but I think the team comment got to her. She let out a soft breath. Okay, she whispered. I walked into class the next morning and immediately felt the tension. Leo and his clique were practically waiting for me at the door. Don't get too settled, Morrison, Leo said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. Nobody jumps 400 spots without some outside help. We already talked to the dean. If you're so smart, you won't mind taking a proctored retest, right? Tyler was hovering in the background, playing the reasonable one. Come on, Leo, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But Morrison, if you didn't do anything wrong, a retest should be easy for you, right? It would clear your name. I just stood there watching them play their roles. It was so transparent, it was almost sad. A few months ago, I would have been shaking with rage. Now, I just wanted to laugh. This was exactly what I needed, a chance to end this once and for all. Sure, I said, leaning back against my desk. Tell the dean I'm ready whenever he is. You name the place. The rumors hit the hallways within seconds. A high-stakes retest in front of the entire department board was all anyone could talk about for the rest of the day. Sarah looked like she'd just been given a lifeline. She was absolutely certain I'd cheated, and she was already smiling at the thought of me getting expelled in front of the whole school. The day of the retest, they put me in a private conference room with 4 department heads staring me down. Sarah, Tyler, and the rest of their crew were huddled outside the glass wall, watching me like they were waiting for a car crash. They gave me a custom exam that was easily twice as hard as the midterm. I didn't even blink. Chloe had taught me how to actually think about the problems, not just memorize answers. I had a whole new way of looking at the questions. I started writing and didn't stop. The answers just clicked. I finished with 30 minutes to spare, handed the packet to the dean, and walked out while everyone outside just stared in shock. The grading was done by the end of the day. The dean himself walked into our homeroom, looking like he'd just seen a ghost. Morrison Carter's score on the advanced retest was actually 15 points higher than his midterm, he announced. The administration would like to formally apologize for the doubt. You could have heard a pin drop. Leo looked like he was about to have a stroke, and Tyler's nice guy expression completely disintegrated. Sarah was literally holding onto her desk to keep from falling over. She was ghost white and shaking. Her whole identity was built on being the smartest person in the room, and I'd just proven she wasn't even close. Suddenly, the kids near the window started buzzing. A jet-black Rolls-Royce Phantom had just pulled into the school's circular drive. The doors opened, and my parents stepped out, looking like they were heading to a gala. My dad looked like a titan of industry, and my mom was the picture of New York elegance, though she definitely looked like she was on a mission. "I'm looking for Leo Hudson and Tyler Bennett," my mother said as she stepped into the classroom. Her voice wasn't loud, but everyone in the room suddenly forgot how to breathe. "I understand you've been telling people my son has some kind of arrangement with an older woman," she said, her eyes landing on the 2 boys. I walked over to them. "Hey, Mom, Dad." You could hear 100 jaws hit the floor simultaneously. "Wait, you're his mother?" Leo stammered, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. "Wait, so the Maybach, it's actually his?" someone else whispered. My father just let out a cold laugh. "Do you really think a Carter would need to hitch a ride from the help? Sarah, I let you live on my property as a favor to your father. But instead of being grateful, you encouraged these boys to trash my son's reputation. It's clear you didn't learn much from your time in our home." The entire classroom felt like it was reeling from the explosion of the truth. The whole mystery was solved. The billionaire heir, the fake girl, the lies about the car, it all finally made sense to them, and the irony was crushing. I wasn't the joke anymore. I was the one at the top of the food chain. After that day, Sarah's life started to unravel. Her Ice Queen act was over. Her father's debts finally caught up with him, and without my family's money to bail them out, she was working double shifts at the cafe just to keep the lights on. She couldn't handle the pressure. Her grades tanked, she choked on the SATs, and she ended up at some local community college while everyone else moved on. Tyler's noble love lasted about a week. As soon as he realized Sarah was never going to be rich, he ditched her to try and salvage his own reputation. He ran away from her as fast as he could. He made it into a decent school, but he spent the rest of his life as a bitter, social climbing executive who never trusted anyone. "I want to see Chloe that night. Your family wants you to stay away from me, don't they?" I asked. I could finally see the whole picture. She was quiet for a long time before she finally nodded. "They thought you were a lost cause, Morrison. They wanted me to move back to the city and forget you existed." I took her hand in mine. "And what do they think now? Still think I'm an idiot?" She looked up at me, and for the first time, her smile reached her eyes. "No," she whispered. "I told them they were wrong about you. I've always known who you really were. Everything from my past life, the pain, the betrayal, it all just washed away. Fast forward a few years, and we were standing on a private beach in the Maldives. I was at the altar in a white suit, watching Chloe walk down the aisle looking like an absolute dream. She was still the same elegant Chloe, but that look she gave me was full of pure love. I'd finished my MBA and was finally running the family empire alongside my dad. When the rings came out, I knelt down in the sand. My hands were actually shaking as I slipped the rebirth diamond onto her finger. "Chloe, you were the only one who didn't give up on me. You showed me that I deserved a second chance, and you made me believe in myself again. You're my everything." She leaned in and kissed me, and the whole crowd erupted. Back in the ballroom, a news report was playing on one of the side monitors. Major gambling ring busted by federal agents. Lead suspect, Arthur Miller, caught at the border. His daughter, Sarah Miller, is currently being questioned regarding money laundering and is facing total financial ruin. I saw the headline, but it didn't even register. That version of my life was dead and buried. I didn't know those people another second of my time. I pulled Chloe close and kissed her as the sun started to set over the ocean. My life was finally my own, and the future was looking better than I ever could have imagined. I finally found what I was looking for. Real revenge isn't about hurting people from your past. It's about building a life so incredible that you forget they were ever part of it in the first place. In the end, I realized that the ultimate way to move on from being used isn't through revenge. It is about building a life so incredible that you completely forget those people ever had any influence over your journey at all.